After my husband's funeral, I never told his family about the lakeside house and the money he left for me. Welcome to Hidden Heart. There is a brass key on a simple steel ring sitting in a small ceramic bowl on my nightstand. It has been there for 14 days. I haven't picked it up. I have not moved it. Every morning when I wake up, that key is the first thing I see. It sits next to the lamp Nolan bought at a yard sale in Quakertown because the shade had a dent and the seller reduced the price by $3. The key opens a small cabin near Holly, Pennsylvania. It has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The cabin stands on a quarter-acre of land off Tinkwig Road, about a 10-minute drive from Lake Wallenpaupack. Nolan bought it 18 months ago for $167,500. I have put it in my name only. I found out about it 2 days after his funeral. I was going through his desk. I was not really searching for anything. I was just touching his things, remembering him. Then I opened the bottom drawer. Inside there was a fireproof lockbox. Inside that lockbox were property papers, a stack of Vanguard brokerage statements showing $315,700, and a note written by Nolan on yellow legal paper. Maybe I should give you the full background, but honestly, I am not even sure where the beginning really is. I will try. My phone rang on a Thursday. It was Tammy. She works at the dental office across the parking lot from my building. She called during her lunch break. "Marissa, you need to eat something. I'm bringing you soup whether you like it or not." That's Tammy. She does not ask permission to care about someone. I had been back at work for 3 days. I handle billing for a gastroenterology practice in Koopesburg. My job is mostly insurance codes and claim disputes. The kind of work where you stare at numbers until your eyes start to blur. Honestly, it helped. Numbers don't ask how you are doing. Numbers do not tilt their head and ask, asterisk, how are you really? Asterisk Nolan died from a pulmonary embolism on a Tuesday morning. He was 37 years old. He worked as a fleet coordinator for a regional trucking company in Bethlehem. I have managed routes, schedules, and driver assignments. Nolan was extremely organized and careful. He was the type of man who labeled every circuit breaker in the basement using a label maker with color-coded tabs. That detail matters. Because when I found the lockbox, I immediately understood something. Nolan didn't plan his death. Nobody plans for a blood clot at 37. But he planned for me. He prepared for the possibility that something might happen to him, and he wanted to make sure I would be safe. The note said, "If something happens to me, everything in this box is yours. Don't let anyone take it." I read that sentence 4 times. Then I closed the box and put it back in the drawer. That Friday, Dale called. Dale is Nolan's older brother, 43 years old. He is a licensed commercial real estate agent in Allentown, the type of man who would wear a Bluetooth earpiece even at a funeral reception. He said he wanted to come over and help me sort out some paperwork, family matters, estate matters. He said it casually, like he was offering to mow the lawn. I said yes. Because he was Nolan's brother. And because I was 34 years old, my husband had been buried 2 weeks earlier, and I simply did not have the energy to question why anyone wanted to help me. Dale sat at my kitchen table for about an hour and a half. I drank 2 cups of coffee and asked me 11 questions. I counted them. That is something I do. I count things. It is an occupational habit. Most of his questions were about Nolan's finances. Did Nolan have life insurance through work? What was the mortgage balance? Did he have any investment accounts? And while he was asking all those questions, that brass key was sitting upstairs on my nightstand. Did I know about any other accounts, investments, or property? I told him about the life insurance. It was $45,000 through Nolan's employer, just the standard company policy. I told him the mortgage was current, and then I stopped. I did not mention the cabin. I did not mention the Vanguard account. Not because I was planning something. Not at that moment. It was simply because those things felt like they belonged to me. Nolan left them for me. And something about the way Dale leaned forward when he asked about other accounts, something about the angle of his body, and how quickly he asked another question, made my stomach tighten. It was a very small feeling. Barely noticeable. I pushed it aside and continued the conversation. That was my first mistake. Not because I should have told him, but because I should have paid more attention to why I didn't want to tell him. 3 weeks after the funeral, Nolan's family started visiting the house one by one. Phyllis came first. Phyllis is Nolan's mother, 68 years old. She has been a widow herself for 8 years. She is the kind of woman who brings you a casserole and then stays long enough that you start wishing you had never opened the door. She arrived on a Monday afternoon carrying a foil-covered dish of baked ziti and a Ziploc bag full of sympathy cards she had collected from friends at her church. "I thought you might want to read these, sweetheart." I thanked her. She sat down. 3 hours later, she was still there. At some point, she started reorganizing my spice cabinet in alphabetical order, without asking. Later, I found the paprika placed between oregano and pepper, and for a moment I almost felt like calling the police. Phyllis has a strange way of helping. It doesn't really feel like helping. It feels more like inspection. She opens a drawer, pauses, looks at what's inside, and then closes it slowly, like she is making a mental record. I watched her do this with the junk drawer, the hall closet, and the cabinet above the refrigerator where Nolan kept a few things that belonged to his grandfather. That is where the watch used to be. It was an Omega Seamaster Professional, made around 1971. Nolan's grandfather, on his father's side, not Phyllis's, wore that watch every day for 30 years. It was not flashy, but it was worth around $9 for 100. More importantly, Nolan loved that watch more than almost anything else in the house. A few days later, Janine came over. Janine is Nolan's sister, 39 years old. She is married to a flooring installer named Greg. She called on a Wednesday and said she wanted to help organize Nolan's closet and the garage. She said it kindly, like she was offering a favor I had asked for. I let her come inside, because I was too tired to say no. She spent almost 4 hours going through boxes, folding shirts, and sorting tools into small piles. She filled 2 large garbage bags with items she said could be donated. Before she left, she asked if I wanted to look through the bags before she loaded them into her car. I checked one bag, quickly. There were old work shirts, a pair of boots with the soles coming apart, and a broken flashlight. So I waved my hand and told her it was fine. The next morning, I went to Nolan's dresser to get his grandfather's watch. Sometimes I would wear it for a little while, or just hold it in my hand and feel its weight on my wrist. But when I opened the drawer, it was empty. I called Janine. "Hey, did you happen to see an Omega watch in Nolan's dresser?" "Silver, older model, leather band." There was a short pause. "Honey, I don't remember seeing it. Maybe Nolan moved it somewhere." "It was in the top drawer. I saw it last week." "I really didn't touch the dresser, Marissa. Maybe check the garage." So I checked the garage. I checked every drawer, every shelf, every box Janine had touched. Nothing. The watch was gone. But I told myself maybe she was right. Maybe Nolan had moved it somewhere, and I forgot. Grief can do that. Grief rearranges your memories like someone shuffling a deck of cards, and handing them back to you in a different order. Meanwhile, send a group text to me, Phyllis, and Janine. We should probably sit down soon and talk about Nolan's estate. There are some financial things that need to be sorted out. Just practical stuff. Practical stuff. That phrase sat in my chest like a stone. Then something small happened, but it stayed in my mind. I came home from work on a Friday and saw 3 pieces of mail on my kitchen counter that were not there when I left that morning. One was a phone bill. One was a credit card statement. The third was a letter from the county assessor's office, the kind that gives an updated property tax value. Dale had been inside the house while I was at work. Phyllis had a spare key. Nolan gave it to her years ago for emergencies. Dale must have borrowed it, and while he was there he collected my mail. I texted him, "Hey, were you at the house today? Some of my mail was moved." He replied a few minutes later, "Oh yeah, sorry. I stopped by to check the furnace filter. Mom asked me to. I must have grabbed the mail by accident." By accident. 3 specific pieces of mail moved from the mailbox to the kitchen counter. That is a very organized accident. But I kept telling myself something. They lost a son. They lost a brother. Maybe this is just how grief looks for some people. Some people deal with grief for cooking food. Some people deal with grief for doing projects. Maybe Dale deals with grief using spreadsheets and furnace filters. For a moment, I almost believed that. 5 weeks after the funeral, The weather turned colder, and most of the trees along Birch Hollow Lane had already lost their leaves. I came home from work on a Tuesday and found a white pickup truck in my driveway. A man I had never seen before was standing on my front porch, holding a clipboard. Dale was standing next to him. "Hey, Marissa," Dale said. "This is Kevin, a friend of mine. Asked him to take a look at your roof. Some shingles are curling, and I just want to make sure you don't end up with a leak this winter." Kevin did not look like a roofer. Kevin had a laser measuring tool on his belt, and he was wearing clean khaki pants. Roofers do not wear clean khakis. But I still let them inside. Because I didn't know how to say "get out of my house" to my dead husband's brother 5 weeks after the funeral. That is the trap, isn't it? Grief gives some people a VIP pass, and if you take that pass away, suddenly you become the heartless one. Kevin spent about 40 minutes inside my house. I have measured the living room. I have opened the furnace closet. I checked the electrical panel and wrote down the amperage. He looked at the water heater and asked when it was installed. And he spent exactly 0 minutes on the roof. This part has nothing to do with the story, but Nolan made the best French toast you could ever eat. I used thick cut bread, real vanilla extract, not the fake kind, a little cinnamon, and just a small pinch of cardamom. I still find his spatula in the kitchen drawer sometimes, the silicone one with the blue handle. Every time I see it, it completely breaks me for about 10 minutes. Anyway, back to the family. My neighbor, Mrs. Kasperzak, is 74 years old. She lives in the yellow house with the flagpole. 2 days later, she stopped me while I was checking the mail. "Marissa, honey," she said quietly, "I saw your brother-in-law walking along your property line on Tuesday with a tape measure. He was out there for about 20 minutes. I thought you should know." I just stared at her. Dale had told me he came to check the roof. Mrs. Kasperzak looked at me the same way my grandmother used to look at me when I said something very naive. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to say anything else. That evening, I called Dale. I tried to keep my voice calm. What was Kevin actually doing at my house? "He didn't even look at the roof, Dale." Dale laughed. Actually laughed. "I've checked everything, Riss. The roof, the structure, the systems. Just making sure the house is in good condition. For your sake. You're a single homeowner now. You should know what you're dealing with." For my sake. Everything they did was always for my sake. Then Phyllis called. And that was when a new phrase entered my life. The family loan. "Sweetheart," she said softly. "I don't know if Nolan ever told you, but when you two bought the house in 2017, Dale and I gave Nolan $42,000 for the down payment." She paused. "We never asked for it back because, well, he was my son. But now that he's gone, Dale and I have been talking and we think it would only be fair to discuss how to handle that $42,000. She said it like she was reading a phone number, like she had practiced the sentence many times. I vaguely remembered Nolan once mentioning that he had paid his mother back over time with several checks. But I couldn't prove that. Not right away. Not from memory alone. Still, something about the phone call didn't feel right. But I tried to be fair. Dale worked with numbers. Phyllis liked to keep records. Maybe there really had been a loan, and Nolan just never explained the details to me. Maybe I simply didn't have the full story. 3 days later, Dale sent me an email with a summary of the loan. It wasn't an original document. It wasn't a signed agreement. It wasn't a bank transfer record. It was just a spreadsheet he had typed himself, with dates and amounts that looked detailed enough to seem real, but there was no supporting proof at all. I forwarded the email to Tammy. She called me 4 minutes later. "Marissa, you need a lawyer." "I don't want to turn this into a war," I said quietly. "Honey," Tammy replied, "it's already a war. You're just the only one who isn't fighting." That night I stared at the spreadsheet for a long time. The columns were neat. The fonts were consistent. It looked professional. But there was no signature from Nolan. Not bank statements. No payment records. No promissory note. Nothing except Dale's word. And I was starting to realize that Dale's word was worth exactly what it cost him to type it. 6 weeks after the funeral, the family changed their approach. They went from helpful to organized. It started with another email from Dale. This one included Phyllis and Janine. The subject line read, House discussion moving forward. The email had 3 paragraphs and included the phrase, "the family's financial interest," twice. It sounded like a business proposal. I have even used bullet points. That same afternoon, Janine called to check on me. We talked for about 22 minutes. She asked how I was sleeping. She asked if I had been eating. And then, almost like she was reading from a script, she said, Greg and I have been talking and things are really tight right now. Nolan would have wanted the family taken care of. Not just you, Marissa, all of us. She paused. We're all grieving. I stayed quiet and let her talk. But while she spoke, I counted how many times she said the word family. She said it 9 times. The next day, Phyllis showed up without calling. She had a real estate flyer in her purse. It showed a 2-bedroom condo in a 55-plus community near Emmaus. She placed the flyer on my kitchen table like she was presenting evidence in court. Just in case you're thinking about downsizing, sweetheart. It's a beautiful little complex, very safe, close to shopping. I looked at her. I am 34 years old. And she had just brought me a brochure for a retirement community. I smiled politely. I thanked her. The moment her Buick drove out of the driveway, I dropped the brochure straight into the recycling bin. That night, I went into Nolan's office and opened the lockbox again. Inside were the property deed, the Vanguard statements, and Nolan's letter. And upstairs, the brass key was still sitting in the ceramic bowl on my nightstand, exactly where it had been for weeks. But now I looked at it differently. It was not just the key to a cabin. It was a way out. I started searching through Nolan's file cabinet. In the 3rd drawer, behind the tax returns, I found a folder labeled Family in Nolan's handwriting. Inside were 5 canceled checks, all written to Phyllis Croft. 3 of them were right there in the folder. $8,000, March 2018 $10,000, September 2018 $8,000, April 2019 that added up to $26,000. Not the full $42,000 they were claiming, but it was something. I used my phone to photograph each check, front and back, with the timestamps saved. That weekend I drove to the cabin for the first time. The drive took about an hour and 40 minutes. I took Route 33, then the Turnpike extension, and finally drove north through the Poconos. I brought the lockbox, 2 suitcases, and the photo albums from the hall closet. Only the things I absolutely could not afford to lose. Because by then, something inside me already knew. Whatever was about to happen next, I didn't want my most important things sitting in a house where Dale had access to a spare key. The next morning was Saturday. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a car door close. Then 2 more. I looked out the window. Dale, Janine, and Janine's husband Greg were walking up the front path like they were arriving for a weekend barbecue. Greg was wearing Nolan's grandfather's watch. The Omega Seamaster, the 1971 model with the brushed steel case. It was sitting on Greg's wrist. And he wasn't hiding it. He wore it like it belonged to him, like it had always been his. My vision actually narrowed. The edges of the room went blurry, and the center became sharp, and the only thing I could clearly see was that watch on a wrist that had no right to wear it. But I didn't say anything. I poured 3 more cups of coffee and sat down at the table. For a moment, I asked myself something. Was I being paranoid? Maybe they really had loaned Nolan the money. Maybe I never paid it back. Maybe Janine really didn't take the watch. Maybe Dale really was just trying to help. Maybe I was just a grieving widow turning my husband's family into villains because I needed someone to blame. I thought about that for about 30 seconds. Then I looked at Greg's wrist again. And I stopped wondering. Before I continue, let me tell me something quickly. If you've been listening this far, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment. Honestly, your comments help me get through the week. I truly mean that. Okay, back to the story. The following Saturday morning, Dale arrived again. No warning. No phone calls. At 9:15 a.m., his silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. A woman I had never seen before stepped out of the passenger side. She was carrying a leather portfolio and a digital camera. Before I even opened the door, She had already started taking pictures of the front of the house. "Marissa," Dale said, "this is Christine. She's a colleague from my office. I just wanted her to take a fresh look at the place." Christine turned and smiled politely at me. Christine smiled at me with that professional warmth that real estate agents practice in front of a mirror. But even while smiling, her eyes were already moving past me into the foyer. She was scanning the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the staircase. Her eyes moved quickly, like she was calculating the square footage in real time. Dale walked through my house like he owned it. He pointed toward the kitchen. Asterisk, asterisk, granite counters, updated in 2019. Asterisk, asterisk, then he pointed at the back door. Asterisk, asterisk, new sliding door, double pane glass. Asterisk, asterisk, he opened the basement door and told Christine the foundation was poured concrete, no cracks. He knew details about my house that even I didn't know. I stood in the hallway watching everything happen. My arms were crossed, and my jaw was clenched so tight I could feel my teeth grinding. Then Dale turned to me. He placed his hand on the kitchen counter, the same granite counter Nolan and I had chosen together at a warehouse in Nazareth after spending 4 Saturdays comparing samples. And then he said it. "We're selling your house." Not asterisk, we should talk about selling. Asterisk, not asterisk, have you thought about it? Asterisk, not even asterisk, what do you think? Asterisk, he said it the same way you might tell a renter that their lease is ending. Like the decision had already been made, and I was simply being informed. I smiled. I couldn't help it. Not because anything was funny, but because during the past week I had already been quietly moving things. The photo albums, the lockbox, my grandmother's crystal, and every other thing that truly matters. I had been loading them into my car and driving them to the cabin that Dale didn't know existed. So while he stood in my kitchen explaining how he planned to take my house, half of the most important things were already gone. Dale saw my smile, but he didn't understand it. He kept talking. I have explained everything like it was a business presentation. The family loaned Nolan $42,000 for the down payment. Nolan never paid it back. That means the family has a financial interest in the property. The simplest solution is to sell the house, repay the family's share, and divide the remaining equity. Christine opened her portfolio. Inside was a listing agreement. It needed 2 signatures. But Dale said it like my signature was just a formality. "I need a second here. This part still gets to me." "I'm fine, it's just," he said it in my kitchen. Standing right beside the refrigerator Nolan and I picked out together at a scratch and dent sale in Hellertown. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the words. The location. He stood in the middle of my life and told me it was his to sell. As they were leaving, Christine leaned closer to Dale and whispered something she thought I wouldn't hear. But I was standing only 6 feet away, and my hearing is excellent. She said, "The comparable homes are closer to $290,000. We could probably list it at $305,000. That was the number. $305,000. That's what they believed my home was worth. That's what they planned to take. I didn't sign. I simply said I needed time to think. Dale's expression changed immediately. The friendly salesman's smile disappeared, and underneath it was something colder and far less patient. "Don't wait too long, Marissa," he said. "The market changes." Then they left. I locked the front door, the back door, and the garage door. After that, I sat down on the kitchen floor, right next to the refrigerator. And I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, and I felt something click into place inside my head. This wasn't grief. It had never been grief. Dale had been running a plan since the day of the funeral. The helpful visits. The roof inspector, who wasn't a roofer. The fake spreadsheet. Phyllis's retirement condo brochure. Janine's sweet sympathy conversations. Every move had been part of the setup. Every act of kindness had been a step in the plan. And that watch on Greg's wrist, that wasn't forgetfulness. That was a family who had already divided up my husband's life, and now they were coming back for the house. I pulled out my phone and texted Tammy 2 words. "You're right." She replied 11 seconds later. "I have an attorney's name. Call him Monday." Mr. Kirshner's office was on the second floor of a converted row house on Broad Street in Bethlehem. The carpet was brown. The waiting room had those padded chairs with wooden armrests that every lawyer's office in Pennsylvania seems to order from the same catalog. Tammy's uncle had used him during his divorce and said the man was thorough and didn't waste time. He was right. I sat across from him with a folder I had prepared over the weekend. Inside were the deed to the house, Nolan's death certificate, Dale's email with the loan spreadsheet, the 3 canceled checks I had found so far. Mr. Kirshner read everything in silence. He wrote 2 notes on a yellow legal pad, then looked up at me. "The house is yours," he said. "Joint tenancy, with right of survivorship. Your husband died, so ownership transferred to you automatically. End of story." I hesitated. "What about the loan?" He leaned back in his chair. "Even if they loaned your husband $42,000, and even if he never repaid a cent, which you already have evidence he did, it's still an unsecured personal debt." He paused. "They cannot place a lien on your property. They cannot force a sale. They have no legal claim to your home." Then he added quietly, "Your brother-in-law is either very confused about property law, or he's counting on you being confused about it." I already knew which one it was. Dale wasn't confused about anything. That night, I went back into Nolan's office with a flashlight and a level of focus I hadn't felt since the funeral. I pulled every file from the cabinet, every envelope, every scrap of paper. Finally, in a folder pushed behind the 2019 tax return, I found the last 2 canceled checks. $8,000, June 2019, $8,000, November 2020, both written to Phyllis Croft. Both endorsed and deposited. That made the total $42,000. The loan had been repaid completely. Every dollar. I photographed both checks, front and back, and placed the originals back inside the lockbox. Then I went upstairs. For the first time, I picked up the brass key. Not just as an idea, not just as a thought. I held it in my hand and felt the sharp teeth of the key pressing into my palm. And I made a decision. After work each day, I would move another carload of things. Everything that truly mattered. The cabin was mine. It was safe. And nobody in the Croft family even knew it existed. Then I made a mistake. On Thursday evening, Phyllis called. She sounded like she was crying, or doing that thing she does that sounds like crying but never produces actual tears. She talked about Nolan, about how much she missed him, about how the family was falling apart. And because I was tired and my guard was down, I said something without thinking. "I talked to someone about the house, Phyllis. It's going to be fine." I meant the attorney, but she heard something else entirely. Within 2 hours, Dale called. His voice was tight. "I hear you've been talking to lawyers." I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I simply said, "I'm handling things." "Handling things," he repeated, like I had insulted him. "Marissa, we're trying to do this the family way. If you bring lawyers into this, it's going to get ugly." But it was already ugly. He just didn't like that I had noticed. The next day, Friday, I came home from work. And the garage had a new lock. A shiny brass deadbolt. One that I did not bite. I stood there staring at the new lock with my car keys still in my hand. Then I called Dale. "Did you change my garage lock?" "Yeah," he said casually. "For security." Mom was worried. "You're not home a lot these days." The man changed the lock on my garage. My lock. On a house he has no legal claim to, using a key he should never have had in the first place. I stood in my own driveway looking at that shiny brass deadbolt and thought, you know what, Dale? That might be the most productive thing you've ever done. Too bad it's going to cost you everything. The following Tuesday, my neighbor Mrs. Kasperzak caught me outside again. She was pulling weeds in her flower bed. At 74 years old, that woman still has more energy than I do. She waved me over. "Marissa," she said quietly, "I saw 2 people going through your house on Monday afternoon. A man and a woman. Your brother-in-law let them in." I froze. He was showing my house to buyers while I was at work. I thanked Mrs. Kasperzak, went inside, and locked every door. Then I changed the front door lock myself. Tammy came over with a drill and a Schlage deadbolt kit she bought from the hardware store. We replaced the lock in about 40 minutes. Then I called Mr. Kirschner and told him everything. I need you to make this stop. Mr. Kirschner sent the letter on Wednesday. It was certified mail, return receipt requested, addressed to Dale Croft at his office on Hamilton Street in Allentown. The letter was simple. Cease and desist. Stop entering the property. Stop representing yourself as having authority over the estate. Stop interfering with the property rights of the legal and sole owner. The letter also included a copy of the deed, proving that full ownership had passed to me after Nolan's death. It cited the relevant Pennsylvania property law, and it included one final sentence that Mr. Kirschner added at my request. Any further unauthorized entry will be reported as trespassing. Dale called me 14 minutes after the letter was delivered. I know because I was watching the tracking number. Marissa, what are you doing? I'm protecting my property. This is insane, he said. You're tearing this family apart. Dale, I said calmly, you brought a real estate agent into my house without permission and told me you were selling it. You changed my locks. You showed my home to strangers while I was at work. I paused. I think we're past the point of family discussions. There was silence. Then he played the line I had been expecting. Nolan would be ashamed of you. Now I know what some people might be thinking. Why didn't I just give them something to make it stop? Write a check $4.42,000. End the fight. Keep the peace. Honestly, I did think about it. For about 3 seconds. Then I remembered something very important. The loan had already been repaid. Every dollar. And Dale either knew it, or he should have known if Phyllis hadn't conveniently forgotten to mention it. So I sent Dale one text message. I attached photos of the 5 canceled checks. $8,000, $10,000, $8,000, $8,000, $8,000 March 2018 through November 2020. Total, $42,000. Paid in full. My message simply said, the loan was repaid by November 2020. Please stop contacting me about the house. Then there were 2 days of silence. I thought it was over. I even told Tammy, I think he finally got the message. She replied, don't celebrate yet. She was right, because Dale did something worse. He filed a fraudulent lien against my property with the Lehigh County Recorder of Deeds. He claimed the $42,000 as an unpaid debt attached to my house. And he filed it without a single piece of proof. I stood there in my driveway, holding my car keys and staring at the garage door. The new lock wouldn't open. My key didn't work anymore. So I called Dale. Did you change the garage lock? I asked. Yeah, he said calmly. For security. Mom was worried. You're not home much these days. He had changed the lock on my garage. My garage. On a house he had absolutely no legal right to. And he used a key he should never have had in the first place. I looked at that shiny new deadbolt and shook my head. You know what, Dale, I thought. That's probably the most productive thing you've done in your life. Too bad it's going to cost you everything. The following Tuesday, my neighbor Mrs. Kasparak stopped me outside. She's 74 and still has more energy than I do. She was pulling weeds from her garden when she waved me over. Marissa, she said, I saw 2 people going through your house on Monday afternoon. A man and a woman. Your brother-in-law let them in. My stomach dropped. He was showing your house, she continued, like it was for sale. Dale had taken buyers through my home while I was at work. I thanked Mrs. Kasparak and went straight inside. I locked every door. Then I decided I was done waiting. I changed the front door lock myself. Tammy came over with a drill and a Schlage deadbolt kit from the hardware store, and together we installed it in about 40 minutes. After that, I called Mr. Kirschner, my lawyer, and told him everything. I need this to stop, I said. He sent a letter the next day by certified mail to Dale Croft's office on Hamilton Street in Allentown. It was a cease and desist notice. Stop entering the property. Stop pretending you have authority over the estate. Stop interfering with the rights of the legal and sole owner. The letter also included a copy of the deed showing that full ownership of the house had transferred to me after Nolan's death. It cited the relevant Pennsylvania law and included one extra sentence that Mr. Kersner added at my request. Any further unauthorized entry will be reported as trespassing. Dale called me 14 minutes after the letter was delivered. I know the exact time because I was watching the tracking number. "Marissa, what are you doing?" he demanded. "I'm protecting my property. This is insane. You're tearing this family apart." "Dale," I replied calmly, "you brought a real estate agent into my home without my permission. You changed my locks. You walked strangers through the house while I was at work. I think we're past family discussions." He went quiet. Then he tried the move I expected. "Nolan would be ashamed of you. Maybe some people would have given in right there. Paid the money just to end the fight. Write a check $4.42,000 and keep the peace." Honestly, I did think about it. For about 3 seconds. Then I remembered something very important. The loan had already been repaid. Every dollar of it. And Dale either knew that, or should have known if Phyllis hadn't conveniently forgotten to mention it. So I sent him a single text message. Attached were photos of 5 canceled checks. $8,000, $10,000, $8,000, $8,000, $8,000 paid between March 2018 and November 2020. Total, $42,000. Paid in full. Asterisk, asterisk, my message said. The loan was fully repaid by November 2020. Please stop contacting me about the house. Then there were 2 days of silence. I actually told Tammy. I think he finally got the message. She shook her head. Don't celebrate yet. She was right, because Dale did something worse. He filed a fraudulent lien against my property with the Lehigh County Recorder of Deeds, claiming the $42,000 was still an unpaid debt attached to the house. He filed it on a Monday. I found out on Wednesday, when Mr. Kersner called me at work. "We have a problem," he said. That lien blocked the title to my house. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't refinance it. I couldn't do anything with it until the issue was cleared. Everything I had been planning, listing the house on my own terms, selling it through my agent, and starting fresh at the cabin, suddenly stopped. For 4 days, I barely slept. At 1 a.m, I stood in my kitchen eating cereal straight from the bowl and staring at the wall. I drove to work and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could force myself to go inside. Finally, I called Tammy and said the words I had been trying to avoid. Maybe I should just give them the money. Maybe it's not worth this. Tammy didn't hesitate. "Marissa Croft," she said firmly, "you are not giving $42,000 to people who stole your husband's watch off his dresser. Call your lawyer." So I did. Mr. Kersner filed an emergency petition to remove the lien. He attached the 5 canceled checks. He attached the original deed. And he attached Dale's own email spreadsheet, the same one Dale had used to pressure me. As Mr. Kersner pointed out in court, the spreadsheet had no or. I could feel the calm for the first time in weeks. She thought she might say something, an apology, an excuse, anything, but she didn't. She closed the door behind her. I heard the Lexus start, the tires crunching over the gravel, and then nothing at all. The cabin smells like pine sap and lake water, not because of a candle, but because that's what it actually smells like. The windows face east, and in the morning, the sunlight pours in as a flat white sheet that fills the whole kitchen before I've even finished my coffee. I hung the brass key on a hook by the front door, the same key that had sat in a ceramic bowl on my nightstand for weeks while I was too grief-blind to see what was happening around me. It's not in a bowl anymore. It's exactly where it belongs. Nolan's letter is framed on the mantel. His block handwriting covers the yellow legal paper edge to edge. The Kupasbug house went on the market last Thursday. My agent, my listing, my terms. Dale's loan? Still outstanding. $38,000 against a house sale that will never exist. His real estate license review? Still pending. I don't know how that will end, and honestly, I don't need to. The last box I unpacked contained Nolan's spatula, the blue silicone one. I put it in the second drawer, left of the stove, exactly where he would want it. You think this story was something? The next one on your screen might be even crazier. Click it. I promise you won't regret it.